working. They were having to do farm work. Well, why in the hell did you not speak up?
And so, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts on all of that insanity. While you either leave that comment or you just kind of sit back and try to take in what the hell we just talked about, I gotta say, hi, welcome to the Philip DeFranco Show. It's your daily dive into the news, which unfortunately means I'm ruining your day a lot of the time. But I appreciate you choosing me to be the one of the people to do that for you. Which on that note, we got a lot more news to talk about today, so let's jump back into it. Starting with, so yesterday, the internet exploded.
Doc tweeted, oh boy, here we go.
He admitted it, bro, on Twitter. He admitted it on Twitter, bro. He was like, yeah, I was DMing minors. Yeah, it was inappropriate. I was like, what?
Guaranteed half your age. Just, that's crazy to say. It's guaranteed.
This was a secret more guarded than the Krabby Patty formula. I really thought we'd never know the reason that Dr. Disrespect was banned. I thought that'd be taken to the grave. I thought we'd crack faster than light travel before we ever learned what the reason behind it was.
Because like we talked about yesterday, Dr. Disrespect, aka Guy Beam, released a statement. And for all the details there, if you've missed all that, I'll link to yesterday's story. But the story around this right now can kind of be broken into three different categories. One, people saying if this situation was serious enough for Twitch to end their relationship with Doc, why are we just now hearing about it now and he's continued to be in the space? Two, updates specifically around Guy Beam and those connected to him. Like I was seeing in the news today that the 49ers have cut ties with him. And three, there's been a lot of talk about how those in the community have reacted. You know, there having been a lot of focus on those who were defending him earlier in the week, with creators like Nick Merckx getting a lot of that spotlight with him saying yesterday,
look, just to be blunt and straightforward, man, that's inexcusable. It's unacceptable, right? Look, the boys and I are torn up over it too, man, because we played a lot of games with the guy and it feels a little weird, but what can you do?
And then saying in a stream today,
yeah, he edited the tweet 3 times. Just so bad. It's so bad, you guys. It's so bad. And look, what do you want from me, man? You know, I gave the guy the benefit of the doubt until we knew more. So to act like I don't care or act like I'm not upset about the shit he did is crazy. You just have to remember that he was a friend of mine. So obviously I'm going to behave a little bit differently. I got some weird, attachments to this. You know, I do. He was a friend. People think that we're like best friends, like we're hanging out. I don't even know the guy outside of a wig. We took one picture together, and newsflash, he was in a wig. And we talked for 8 minutes. Now, I don't want to dumb down a relationship.
Meanwhile, you had a lot of creators making Chris Hansen to Catch a Predator references.
He is doing the Chris Hansen pedophile defense, by the way.
Like, if any of you have watched To Catch a Predator, you'll recognize that tactic, that little maneuver right there.
He said they did not meet up. He had no intentions. You can take that however you want to. To me, it sounds like what every guy who got caught on To Catch a Predator said, to be honest.
Now, Doc, I'm going to need you to have a seat right over there.
Though also with all this, you have a lot of people still pushing for more information to come out, right? People wanting to see what was in the actual chat logs or the whisper logs. Others also wanting to know the specific age of the person the Doc was saying these things to. Because depending on where you go online, there are people just kind of throwing out all these different ages. So notably, all of them under the age of 18.
Like, did Doc know the age of the person he was talking to when he was talking to them?
If he knew that was a minor and those were the messages being sent, I cannot support that.
Now, like, if he had no idea that it happened and, like, he didn't know this person was a minor, like, yeah, he's still an idiot for doing it for sure, but, like, it takes, like, the bad scale from, like, I don't know. Like, it takes it down a number of notches to me.
Now, what's not clear and what a lot of people are coping with is that maybe Dr. Disrespect didn't know the age of the person he was communicating with, but I truly feel if that was the case, Dr. Disrespect would have mentioned that, saying that he had those communications with this person that he believed was of age but turned out to be a minor.
You know, ultimately, that is where we are with this, as all of this continues to play out both in the court of public opinion and as others wait to see if more information could be coming. And then we need to talk about Georgia State Trooper. Right, so that is how long it took Georgia State Trooper Jake Thompson to shoot unarmed 60-year-old Julian Lewis after stopping him. So fast that Thompson wasn't even able to finish saying, hey, get your hands up before opening fire. And now a new investigation and footage from the incident has called Thompson's entire story and defense into question, which is notable because, I mean, all of this happened back in August of 2020, right, which notably is around the same time that the officers involved in George Floyd's death were being held accountable. And footage from this incident shows that Thompson had been trying to pull Lewis over for 5 minutes over a broken taillight, and reportedly they reached speeds of up to 65 miles per hour, with eventually Lewis putting his left hand out the window, pointing to a dirt road that he wanted to turn on. Once on that road, Thompson managed to initiate a pit maneuver which forced Lewis's car into a ditch, which is when Thompson then jumped out, and within 1.6 seconds, he shoots Lewis in the head, killing him on the spot. And then when other officers responded to the scene, Thompson told them, quote, "I had to shoot this man, and Jesus Christ, he almost ran me over," with him claiming that Lewis revved his car at him and he was turning the wheel like he was gonna run him over. So he was saying, this shooting, it was to defend myself. However, despite this story and this claim, Thompson eventually was arrested and charged with murder. And after being denied bail, he spent nearly 100 days in jail. Just sitting there wondering, is the prosecutor gonna pursue charges? But then suddenly everything just gets dropped, and it left so many people going, well, why? Everything sounds so sketchy. And what we saw is that the Associated Press ended up getting their hands on a bunch of the dash cam footage along with evidence that sheds light on the situation. But it also has left a number of questions. Right, so for starters, we publicly learned that Thompson's excuse for shooting Lewis, it doesn't seem to add up. Right, in the original investigation, it showed that after crashing, the battery on Lewis's car, it was disconnected and the entire battery was dismounted. And testing showing that if the battery was disconnected, the engine would stop immediately. Right, so it's just not possible for Lewis to have revved up at a high rate of speed like Thompson claimed. Although in the footage, there is something that maybe sounds like an engine revving, but no one's sure what it is. And on top of that, we now know that the tire marks from the scene clearly show that Lewis's front tires were pointed away from the trooper's car. And the AP spoke to experts about the new footage, and they were not happy with Thompson, with one former Boca Raton police chief saying this guy just came out shooting, and saying that Lewis didn't have remotely sufficient time to respond. Right, and all of that probably has you asking, well then why did the charges get dropped? And actually we now have a better idea of why. See, the prosecutors brought the evidence before a grand jury, and the grand jury decided not to proceed, which is generally pretty shocking because a grand jury will usually indict anyone on anything, right? Because the bar is very, very low there. Well, it turns out that in Georgia, police officers have a privilege that no one else gets. They are allowed to defend themselves in front of a grand jury. And it appears that this grand jury bought Thompson's initial story. And since no new evidence was brought to the prosecutors, they declined to go for another indictment. And then the situation gets even messier, right? Because despite state officials dropping charges, Thompson was still looking at the U.S. Department of Justice possibly going after him. But even there, he ended up getting an unusual deal. They ended up making an agreement with him to not prosecute him if he just agreed to not go into law enforcement ever again, which obviously the Lewis family not happy about. Right? I mean, the closest thing they got to justice is the $4.8 million settlement with the state of Georgia. Money doesn't bring people back. Money doesn't hold accountable the person that took a loved one from you. And all of this, unfortunately, just serves as yet another reminder that despite the push for more accountability, despite the push for body cams, there's still so many hurdles in place to actually prosecute and get justice. And then, is it just me or do the days feel longer to you? And I'm not just talking about daylight savings time, but just like the daily grind, which is actually why I've been looking for an alternative caffeine hit lately. My wife actually convinced me that matcha would be a better pick-me-up. And after trying Peak Sun Goddess matcha for the last few weeks, I'll say I've noticed more sustainable energy without the jitters, caffeine crashes, or anxiety. And that's why I was so excited this week to hear that Peak had decided to sponsor the PDS, right? Especially because their Sun Goddess matcha combines slow-release caffeine and catechins, which help curb cravings and support lipid metabolism, and L-theanine, promoting calm and balance. It's also 100% organic and quadruple toxic screen for pesticides, heavy metals, toxic mold, and even radioactive isotopes. And Sun Goddess matcha trees are shaded longer to maximize antioxidant and L-theanine potential, protecting the body from free radicals. And Peak makes it super easy with their pre-measured packs that dissolve in both hot and cold water with a delicious, creamy umami flavor. Perfect for work, home, and on the go. Plainly put, Peak Sun Goddess matcha is the best matcha for energy, performance, and caffeine without the jitters. And you can get up to 15% off plus a free rechargeable frother and a cup by going to peaklife.com/DeFranco or just scan the QR code on screen. That's up to 15% off with a free rechargeable frother and a cup when you shop at peaklife.com/DeFranco. And then often when the mainstream talks about the streaming wars, it's usually like Netflix versus Disney versus Apple Plus. Well, yeah, that makes sense when you're talking about paid streaming services. The king of streaming is still YouTube, with new reports even highlighting these specific ways YouTube is so dominant when it comes to streaming time. And when people think of YouTube, they often think of, computers and phones. But YouTube actually accounted for 9.7% of all viewership on connected and traditional TVs last month. That was 2% higher than Netflix's share, which then brings us to a very interesting question as posed by CNBC. For the studios and these other media companies, is YouTube a friend or a foe. Right? Obviously, in the friend category, they're more than happy to post trailers to their content so people get excited, then go to their service. Some even doing things like putting past seasons or a first episode of a new season on YouTube. But then also, apparently some platforms are like, well, what if we did what they do? With reports coming out that Disney's apparently considering adding user-generated content to Disney Plus, right? Especially as, there are tons of Disney superfans who discuss the parks and the movies and the merch and the food on places like YouTube and TikTok. And so apparently you have the company considering doing that, though notably they have no plans to right now. You have some arguing that this is a quantity problem. With, for example, media analyst Rich Greenfield saying, I think what we're seeing from all these traditional media companies is they don't have enough content and it's too expensive to produce the types of premium content at scale that they need. And so maybe the user-generated content economy is a place they look, not to create their competitor, but as a lower cost way to add content to their services. So notably, like all these platforms, they don't